Welcome back to the Afinida Insurance Podcast. My name is Savannah Abney, and today I'm chatting with Alyssa Wilcox, one of our insurance experts on everything EPLI insurance. So, before we fully dive in, Alyssa, can you just tell everybody what EPLI insurance is to begin with, if they don't fully understand it, and why they should care as a business owner what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So EPLI stands for Employment Practices Liability Insurance. So essentially, all of the liability you have relating to your employees and how you treat them and how you pay them and promote them. So people get upset, and if they have to be let go, they can become litigious. And so this is the policy that's going to protect you from any claims that are brought against you as a business owner from your employees.
Really, really important in our current environment and landscape right now. I think we're probably the most litigious that our society has ever been to this point. A pretty essential form of coverage right now. Okay, let's get into some details on this type of coverage. What types of employee claims does it not cover, and how can we fill those gaps? Because it's not just a one size fits all, like everything that ever happens, it's not an umbrella, it covers everything. What are some things that it might not, or where you need to kind of look out for that?
Yeah, I think the most common exclusion when it comes to EPLI is wage and hour claims. So these are the claims where employees are like, well, you didn't let me take my lunch break. And so you owe me all this money. So in general, most policies will not cover wage and hour claims. And I think that's because those are the claims that are easiest to avoid. Like, make sure your employees clock out for lunch. Work life balance is important. I know, so are profits, but ultimately your employees' well-being is the most important thing. So most often those are excluded. On occasion you can get those types of claims covered. It is going to be very expensive, again, because it's just an avoidable thing. And if you have a concern about wage and hour, like, you should maybe revisit how you're managing your employees. Other exclusions we see are any sort of penalties or fines. So if like the state or county or city governance decides that, yes, not only were you wrongful and you owe your employee lost wages or payments, if any claims or, any penalties are leveraged against your company, those are something that you're going to have to pay out of pocket. Most carriers will not pay for them. And then I'm also starting to see some sexual abuse exclusions. So, of course, there's a line between sexual harassment and sexual abuse, but like, if the harassment escalates to a point where abuse is happening, it will likely be excluded and declined.
It seems like a rule of thumb is these are clearly dumb things that are avoidable. These are clearly obvious things like let your employees take breaks, make sure they're protected in the workplace. And if you're not doing those things, then no, you're not gonna be able to cover that because those are just things you should be doing as an employer in general. So depending on the size of my team and how I classify workers between full-time, part-time, contractor, W-2, etc., how does that tend to affect EPLI rates and eligibility?
As with most insurance, like, the larger the exposure, the more amount of premium you have. So if you have 10 employees working for you versus 100 employees, obviously the person with 100 employees is going to have to pay more premium. The premium is rated on either a per employee basis or a payroll basis. So that's going to just impact the amount of premium that you pay. I think more so the type of industry that you're working in is also going to be the other factor that indicates your rate. So interestingly, like white collar jobs, folks who are working in offices, like, typically higher paid, those are going to have, in some cases, higher rates because these are the folks who get more upset when they're let go and more often have the means to make claims. So you can get quotes. Of course, each carrier is going to be different. Like, the cost can range from $1,000 up to like $10,000 for the same company. So it's just important to work with an independent broker to shop around and see who has the best rates. And we certainly are always looking for new carriers and new solutions to offer savings for our clients.
We kind of touched on this a little bit with the first question, but this is a little bit beyond just the basics, the do these things. But what are some risk management or HR best practices that you recommend to lower those premiums over time beyond the obvious stuff of like make sure they're taking lunch breaks and make sure it's a safe work environment? What are some other things that maybe business owners don't, they are innocently ignorant to?
I think this is one of those situations where, like, oftentimes we know who the problem children are. And, if you see patterns developing and you start getting concerned, I think it's important to start documenting. Of course, having an HR and risk management team shows that you are being proactive in the sort of safety of your work environment. So work with them, say, hey, HR, like I noticed problem child over here is I'm starting to see some patterns. What do we do? How can we get in front of this? So taking a proactive approach to work with the employees, meet their needs, and then, making sure that you're properly documenting so that if it does escalate to the point where they file, some sort of discrimination suit against you, you have all of the documented proof that you took X, Y, and Z step on these dates and then you were being proactive. So that's the biggest thing. When allegations do come up of, maybe inappropriate behavior, take them seriously. It is so important. Like, I think, yes, a lot of people are overly sensitive in some ways, but, as an employer, we have to support our employees and make sure that, like, it's not necessarily an overreaction as opposed to something that is actually happening that's of concern. So take everything seriously, document it, do your due diligence.
I mean, even just for your own sake, even if it doesn't end up being something that was traumatic, it protects you in the long run. Last question for you, just really practically, if an employee does file a claim, what's the first step that a business owner needs to take before contacting insurance? Because it may or may not be covered. Should you just go ahead and reach out anyways? Like, what are those kind of first steps to take?
I do think that, like, as soon as you are aware of a claim, it is always good to inform your insurer. I will note that a lot of BOPs that we're seeing include a small amount of employment practices liability and coverage, typically like 10 or $25,000. So the quicker you can notify the carrier, the more resources you're going to have to respond to the claim. So it may be that you don't have the coverage and it's declined, or it may be, let us put you in touch with this group that is able to respond to these types of claims and support you through the process. So, lawsuits are hard and emotional and, you're going through the gambit of emotions. And so I recommend filing a claim as soon as you're aware, because you're just going to have that support to work through the issues. And
All
then,
right.
of course, gather all the documentation that you've made.
Document, document, document.
That's right. CYA, cover
Yeah.
your assets.
Well, thanks so much for your insights as always. And thanks for tuning into this episode of the Afinida Insurance Podcast. We'll see you next month.